talking about making partnerships work, and there's 3 specific areas that we're going to focus on. The first is working with families from diverse backgrounds. The next we're going to talk about is working with families in particular circumstances. And the last is working with families to resolve challenging attitudes and challenging behaviors. So let's start with diversity. Diversity is something that as a teacher you need to be very aware of, and making sure that diversity is infused into your classroom. Teachers need to pay attention to diversity. When we say diversity, that doesn't mean just race. It means cultures, it means languages, it means families of different types. We have 2-parent families, 1-parent families, same-sex families, parents that are not raising their children and the grandparents are. We have parents that are incarcerated and children being raised by foster families. They're just all different kinds of families. So we need to be aware of different types of families, different religious backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds. I'm sure during your time of teaching you will have children that don't celebrate certain holidays, and some that celebrate holidays that you don't celebrate. And so being aware of those diverse cultural nuances in your class, you need to make sure that you incorporate and welcome those activities. You need to examine your own personal attitude towards diversity. What are the things that you might have some prejudice against? We all think that we're not prejudiced, but if we examine ourselves, we find things that might bother us. Maybe it's a political view. Maybe it's a way a person dresses. Maybe it's a way of family disciplines. Maybe it has something to do with single parenting. Whatever it is, we have to make sure we put those on the shelf and that we deal with people as people and not their values that they bring to our classroom. Take the time yourself to learn about other cultures. Knowledge is power. Oftentimes we perceive things that are incorrect. And when we take the time to get to know someone from another culture, our lives become more rich. You can get to know the person or you can read about them, but either way, you need to find out about other cultures. Establish a welcoming environment. Make sure that all people are welcome in your class. Be open to communication about other cultures. If a parent is from another culture and they want to talk to you about their culture, you need to be open to that. And maybe they might even want to know about your culture. And be considerate of holidays. Holidays are one of those things that some centers don't even celebrate any holidays. But I know at Halloween time, you might have some people that don't celebrate Halloween. You might have people that are from other countries, so Thanksgiving isn't a big deal to them because Thanksgiving is an American holiday. It might not be to them. They might celebrate Jewish holidays that are not necessarily on your calendar, or they might celebrate Muslim holidays or Christian holidays that may or may not be on your calendar. Some parents celebrate Easter as a religious experience. Some people celebrate it as a commercial experience. Some people don't celebrate it at all. Same with Christmas. So you need to make sure that you're very, very aware of the students in your class and what they celebrate and what their traditions are. So families with particular circumstances. Families with particular circumstances might be families that are going through divorce. There's always a challenge in the household when there's a divorce happening. Children are affected by divorce. Sometimes they're better off afterwards, sometimes they're not. But children get wrapped up in it, and sometimes they see their parents argue, or sometimes a parent is too forthcoming with the child and giving them too much information that they're not ready to handle. And we need to be aware of a child that's going through a divorce or living in a divorced family and is missing their other parent. You need to maintain a structured environment so that things are consistent for children. Things may not be consistent at home. Having a consistent environment, a regular schedule, children know where to find their toys, they know where to put their coats away, they know where their cot is for a nap, they know where their comfort things are, they know when they're going to eat. Those sort of things help the child maintain in spite of having a home life that is disruptive. You can reassure parents when they come in and they're going through a divorce. You can reassure them that you are providing a structured, safe environment for their child, and that you are caring and loving for their child and providing them a nurturing environment. You can keep your requests light for them. They have a lot on their plate. They may be having to spend a lot of money on lawyers or being a single parent, so their income is cut in half. So the requests that you make of them, make sure that they aren't too demanding. Be aware of the legal arrangements. Oftentimes in a divorce, one parent may have custodial rights and the other one has limited visitation rights. Some of them have no visitation. Sometimes those parents will show up, the ones that have no visitation, they'll show up and they'll snatch the child. The child will go to them because it's their parent. And if you aren't aware of that, then you are in a big legal mess. Be very aware of who is able to pick up children. Know of available resources. Parents that are going through a divorce may be having a hard time financially. They may be having a hard time emotionally. Know of resources that you can refer them to, whether it be where they can get food at the food pantry or whether they can get free legal help. So just be thoughtful and aware about what are the things that they might need and what are the things just as you as a citizen know about and can refer them to. Be aware of step families. Oftentimes when a family is blended together, there can be some tension. There's new brothers and sisters or a new mom and dad. And so the child doesn't know how to react to a new mom and dad. They might discipline differently than their parent, than their biological parent. There might be bullying, there might be favoritism. So be aware of step families and extended families. When I say extended families, sometimes the child is being raised by the grandparent. The parent might have custodial care of them, but really who's raising the child is the grandparent. So be aware of that. Be aware of any special needs. If the child has any special needs, you need to make sure that you're aware of those. Treat the parents as individuals. They're going through a hard time. They need to be treated not only as Johnny or Susie's mom or dad, but as an adult. So treat them as individuals. And focus on the present and the future and the hope. Oftentimes parents who are going through a divorce come in and they just spill out their guts to anyone. And oftentimes it's information that you don't want to hear. Make sure you're a professional and that you don't share that information with anyone else. And try to regroup and re-guide your conversation back to their child, back to the hope for their child, back to the future for their child. Be clear with information. Be hopeful and realistic about whatever the special situation is. Help families let go. Oftentimes when families are going through a difficult time, they show up at the door and they don't want to let their child go. Help them transition, and then just know available resources for them. When we talk about difficult situations and being aware of difficult situations, one of the things we have to be aware of is abuse. We need to know the signs of abuse. What are the physical signs of abuse? I mean, they're pretty typical, but if you see bruises on a child, if a child has bloody underwear, a child is flinching when something comes close to them and they shouldn't be flinching. They have behavioral attitudes like kicking and screaming and temper tantrums out of the blue from a child that you don't normally see. Emotionally, they might be withdrawn, just severely depressed acting, hiding. Those are all signs that are not normal, and so you need to be aware of the signs of abuse. Be aware of the signs of neglect, and children that come in dirty, hungry, children that who are sat in front of the TV. You know that when they talk about television shows that are on at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, you know that they're just sitting in front of the TV. That's neglect. Make sure you document any signs of abuse or neglect, and that is reportable. If you think that a child is being abused, or if you think a child is neglected, you are, by law, a mandated reporter. Any citizen who thinks that the child is abused or neglected is a mandated reporter, and you need to report that to the Department of Social Services or to police. Now, on to challenging behaviors and challenging attitudes. Sometimes parents refuse to let their child be tested. If a child has gotten to the point where they have had enough documentation that we know that something is wrong and it needs to be tested by a professional, it needs to be referred, some parents refuse to let their child be tested because they just feel there's nothing wrong, there's nothing wrong with my child. So that's a problem. You may have to take it to a higher level, like to your administrator. Some discourage discipline. They don't want their child to be disciplined at all. They feel like the child should be free to explore what they want to do, and who are you to discipline my child? And so when we talk about discipline, think about discipline in terms of redirection, not in terms of punishment. And when you talk about it in that light to parents, I think they'll be more receptive in that, Johnny is knocking over blocks of other people's work. We need to redirect him to something else that interests him more. Sometimes parents don't follow through. You ask them to do something to cooperate with you, you set goals together, and they don't follow through. And ultimately, you can't do anything about that. You can't change other people, you can only change yourself. Change what you do in the classroom, do what you do in the classroom. Some parents push academic work. They don't want their child to play. And we know that children learn through play. They want to see worksheets coming home. They want to hear their children recite their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, and they think that if they're not doing that, that their child's not learning and you're not doing a good job. It's important for you to establish right from the beginning that research is very clear that children learn through play. And yes, they will be learning their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, but the most important thing that a parent can do with their child, and the most important thing that child can do in the classroom, is to play, because play builds their executive functioning skills, and those are the skills that they need to self-regulate. Those are the skills that they need to communicate. Those are the skills that they need to interact with others. Those are the skills that are lifelong skills that help them in the workplace later on. Those are the skills that help them to be successful in school, that help them pay attention to learning when it's time to learn their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. Some parents insist that a child be prohibited from certain play. Oftentimes fathers do not like their boys playing in the dress-up area. They think that they're going to be gay. And so we have to talk to them about how children are just playing. That's all they're doing. That doesn't mean that your child is gay or not gay. There's no value judgment associated with that. It's just your child is playing. Your child is playing with girls at that time, and the girls are playing dress-ups. He just wants to join in and play. There's nothing associated with that is negative. Your child is exploring. So oftentimes they will tell you, I don't want my child doing such and such. And you're going to have to kindly tell them that your child is just exploring. I'm not going to prohibit them from playing in the areas that they want to play in. Sometimes parents insist that children fight back. If someone bites them or pinches them, pinch them back, push them back, kick them in the shins. And so we know that hitting back is not necessarily what we want in our classroom. We don't want people to hit. We don't want people to bite and scratch. And your child needs to be instructed that when that happens to go get the teacher. Sometimes parents gossip and compare. They gossip about the children. They might visit the classroom for the day, and then they go out to the soccer game and they talk about, oh, poor little Lionel, he can't read, and my child is reading on the 3rd grade level. And so they gossip and compare. And we can't do anything about that when they leave the classroom. However, we do want to make sure that when they're in the classroom, that we know that they understand child development and they have a different perspective. Sometimes a child comes in and uses foul language, and they use foul language because they've heard it somewhere and picked it up somewhere. And so make a note of it, redirect the child, maybe let the child know that we don't use that word in the classroom, And if it happens often, then make more notes, and then you'll have to speak to the parent about it. Sometimes we have parents who are what we call, they use smother love. Smother, not mother, smother. They smother their child with love. They treat the child immaturely. They won't let the child go. They treat the child as a baby. They're hugging and kissing the child constantly. When they go to leave, they just hug and squeeze and kiss all over the child. Eventually the child will get embarrassed by it, but for the most part they're smothering the child, and so we need to encourage to help their child develop beyond the baby stage. And so that may take some talking to the parents about the appropriate, a way that will help their child transition like the other children. We have the perfectionist parent, the parent who is critical of the child because every little thing they do isn't perfect, and we need to make sure that they know about child development. And we have the parents who fail to show up. They'll say they're going to take part in something, and then they just don't make it a priority. And it's not a forgotten appointment, it's a history of several forgotten appointments. Sometimes we have parents that are hostile when they approach us, and we need to understand that hostility is a mask, it's a cover-up, because they're being suspicious. They're showing me that they're suspicious. They're showing me that they're defensive of themselves. And so the best thing you can do is remain calm and take notes and make sure you report it to your supervisor. Avoid value-laden words. Oftentimes those kinds of words will set someone off. I always use the example, I had a child in the class that cheated, and she received a 0 for her grade, and I wrote in her electronic grade book in the memo, cheated. Father came in the next day, and he was very, knocked on the door and asked to speak to me in the hallway, and he got in my face and started yelling at me, pointing, and just angry, angry, angry. I felt sorry for the girl because she was sitting in the classroom and everyone in the classroom could hear her father yelling at the teacher. I had to remain calm. I wanted to jump out of my skin and scratch his eyes out, but I didn't. I remained calm. He told me that I was embarrassing him because I wrote cheated in the grade book. The only person that could see the grade book was he and I and his daughter. And so what I learned from that experience, I went and told my supervisor right away, and he, by the way, went and saw my supervisor too. What I learned from that is that the word cheated was considered a value-laden word. And so what I had to do is I had to explain factually in the memo what she did. She told me this was her grade, she changed her answers and submitted a different grade. He was acceptable with that. But the fact that I wrote the word cheated was embarrassing to him as a parent, and he took offense to that and came in the class and yelled at me about it. So be very careful when you write your documents that they are very factual, and remain calm. Acknowledge and accept anger. Don't be defensive, and express your concerns constructively. Some parents are indifferent because there are cultural differences. Some believe that it's inappropriate for the father to talk to a female teacher. So you need to just be aware that some people may not show interest in their child in meeting with you as a teacher because culturally maybe that's just what the mom does, or males and females don't do that together. You need to be aware of that. And then sometimes the parent is just under such emotional pressure that they can't deal with one more thing. And you need to be aware of that as well. It's not that you ignore the child, but you might have to wait for an appropriate time. Some parents are over-involved. They're reluctant to separate. They have unmet and personal need to suffocate their child with just too much attention. Sometimes the parent is insecure, or sometimes the parent is longing to talk, and they are trying to get that therapy, I'll call it, from you. Oftentimes you don't have time to talk when they want to talk over lengthy things. So you might need to make an appointment, or you might need to make a referral for them. Sometimes parents and teachers have conflicts, and one of the things they have conflicts over is sick children. People will oftentimes, if their child gets up and isn't feeling well, and if their child has a fever, they will give them some Motrin or some Tylenol to bring the fever down. Then they'll send them to the daycare, and then 4 hours later the daycare will call because the child has a fever. In the meantime, they've exposed everyone else to whatever it is they're coming down with. That causes a lot of conflict. And so your center needs to be very clear about sick children and the expectation. Sometimes a child is just teething, and the parents need to be aware that it's a teething thing and not a sick thing. If the child is just teething and they give them the Motrin before they come in and the child spikes a fever, talk with the teacher and say, we've talked to the doctor, can we come in and give them some more Motrin? They're not contagious, they're just teething. And sometimes some centers will allow that. Parents and teachers sometimes have conflicts because there's lack of respect. Occasionally a parent will say, you do your job, I'll do mine. I don't need to hear about this. I know there's nothing wrong with my child. And so we need to be very careful about making parents think that there's something wrong with their child. There might be a situation that needs to be addressed, but there's nothing wrong with their child. Address the situation and not attack the child. Sometimes parents pick their children up late, and that's a problem. Your center should be very clear on their policies and their charges for late pickup, and there's situations for whatever it is that are excused. Maybe there's an accident on the highway or something like that. So be very clear on policies, and if the parent is late picking up a child, don't make it the child's fault. Don't speak to the child about, I wish your parents would get here, I'm supposed to go out. And so make sure that you maintain your professionalism around that. Sometimes parents and teachers have conflicts because at the end of the day, the teacher wants to talk to the parents about something that happened, and the parents want to get going and they don't want to listen to it. So again, think of how you approach that. Think of how that information can be delivered to the parent. And sometimes parents ask for special treatment, and then other parents find out and it's unfair, and so you need to be very clear on your policies. And then sometimes parents have disagreements over readiness. They think that a child is ready to go on to another level when socially they might not be ready. A child can learn to read and learn to manipulate numbers at a very early age, but if they're not socially ready to go on, it's not a positive thing to advance that child. They're not going to make friends, and the child's going to be emotionally unhappy. And so readiness needs to be explained to parents in the terms of your child is cognitively ready, but your child is not emotionally ready or physically ready to go on to the next level. So those are some of the things that you need to be concerned about with the differences in parenting within your classroom.